I hope you can also include this in the templates, right? Because that have been given, right? So please include everything that has been mentioned there, because that's God's plan, that the older women will teach the younger women. And they in turn will also teach the people younger than them from generation to generation. All right? What have you seen from here? Each of these scriptures passages clearly shows us that God's design calls for generation that is going up to pour into a generation that is what? Coming up. Is that clear? I don't think anything can be clearer than that from what you've seen so far. At the same time, his design calls for the rising generation to follow the examples of what? As we know, based on the scriptures, what the scriptures have said. I think it was last week. No, that would be 2 weeks ago. I had a topic with the youths here, and I was telling them something. It looks like, you know, those things that when you tell us in university will start riots. I was telling them that you are stakeholders. So if you are here and you're not involved, we will make decisions that may what? Impact you negatively. So because you are stakeholders, you'll be the one that, when we are saying certain things, you know that some of these men that are saying this will not be here in 20 years. So if the decision is wrong, what will you do is start screaming. Right? Because you are in the coming generation, you will be interested in what is being what? Handed over to you, because you are a stakeholder. Right? So that is the design of God. It is a perfect design of God for the good of all people and ultimately for God's glory. So what kind of Christian will we be if we just coast along, worshiping God and praising Him, and we are not worried about what happens after we are not here? What it means that we will now have making effort to break God's design, because that's not how we did it. Very quickly, let's look at some biblical case studies, some examples in the Bible. I've mentioned them, but I just want to list them there. There are stories you know, so I won't bother into so much about that, right? Let's see some of the case studies. From Moses to Joshua, there was mentorship and there was succession. I talked about succession planning. Moses, under God's direction, mentored Joshua for decades and commissioned him as his successor to lead Israel into the promised land. He was not there. He knew he was not going to be there. He wanted to be sure that when he will not be there, that things will still go according to plan. And that was the job given to what? Joshua. And he delivered to instruction. We've talked about the covenantal succession, that the promise God made to Abraham. He made sure that he fulfilled it in Isaac. He made sure that promise was also fulfilled in what? Jacob, which otherwise was called Israel, because of the promise that has been made to them. And like I read earlier, he told them, I'm the Father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. A very interesting one, which I think I actually appreciate, is the mentorship and spiritual inheritance between Elijah and what? Elisha. Why is this peculiar? Right? Elisha asked for double portion of Elijah's spirit. He's basically saying, I don't want to just be like you. I want to be more than you. If you think that is easy, it's not. Right? So Elijah, in all his popularity and glory, probably would have wanted to be referred to as the greatest prophet that ever lived, even when he wasn't there. And somebody, his mentee, a small boy that he picked up, is telling him, I want to have the double of what? Your spirit. He obliged him. You know, he wasn't saying, why are you greedy? And I'm going to talk about this a bit more later on. We saw the example of Paul to Timothy, like I mentioned earlier, what we call the 2-2-2 principle, where Paul was telling Timothy, these things I'm telling you, I'm encouraging you to entrust them to faithful men that will also entrust them to what? Others. Creating a multi-generational chain of teaching and all of that. So that there's never a time that people will say they don't know about God. We also know about David to Solomon. Not only that Solomon was his son, but Solomon succeeded him. He handed over to his son and he gave him extra instructions. Things they will do when he will no longer be there. You know, sometimes I will tell my kids that there were some promises I made that I'm not sure if I can fulfill. So they will inherit those ones when I'm not here. Right? So David prepared his son Solomon for leadership, giving him instructions to build the temple. In fact, if you read that account, there's one interesting part I like there. He was telling him to be a man. He said, act like a man. Almost like, I know that the journey is not going to be easy, but make sure you act like a man, preparing his son. There are many examples, right? But the generation leadership was so designed that even when people went on exile, even when people went to strange lands, maybe they went and they met strange cultures, right? There was still provision. Leaders like Israel, leaders like Nehemiah, they took it upon themselves to keep reminding the people of, by reading the book of law to the next generation, so that will not be what? Lost, because they've gone to what? Exile. Are we following? These are clear examples in the Bible. Now, what are the principles of generational? What are the principles? Principle number one is, it is about legacy. It is about continuity. Right? Legacy and continuity, something is handed over. Hopefully, what is handed over is good. Right? But I was saying, even if what is handed over is not perfect, it becomes your responsibility to make it what? Better than you met it. That's what stewardship is all about, right? But generational leadership is talking about, there's a legacy. There's something that is handed over from the older generation, and the younger generation should continue with that, so that they can also what? Hand over to the people coming after them. All right? We read some examples already. The ultimate aim is to produce generations that know, that fear and serve God, because of what their ancestors have already told them about, so that they can also tell their own children, right? So leaders are called to live and walk in ways that will outlive them. You don't think of just when you are here, you also think of what of when you are not here, ensuring your impact will last for future generations. The second principle of generational leadership is mentorship and succession. It is not left to chance. Oh, but they are there. They could see us doing it. So when we are not here, they will know what to do. No, it's not that. You could see examples of Moses to Joshua. You could see examples to Paul and Timothy. It was more than just, oh, after all, were you not there when I was doing it? Right? There was a deliberate plan for mentorship. There's a deliberate plan to guide. There's a deliberate plan to train. There's a deliberate plan to actually make sure that this person is equipped for the work to be done in the future. Knowing that leadership is not a permanent position. Leadership is a baton that has to be passed, right? And I gave example already for what Moses did to Joshua. We keep talking about 2 Timothy 2:2, and we are saying that regional leadership is the command to entrust the gospel to reliable people who will be qualified to teach others. So this creates a chain of influence where the current leader's success is measured by the readiness of those who follow. So if you are saying that you're a great leader, show us your CV. Your CV should contain people who have become great leaders because of you. Your CV should actually have people who have groomed to take over, even do better than you can when you are not there. That's what it can actually make you say you have done your work, right? So the body of Christ flourishes when older generations will mentor the younger one. We give an example of the older women mentoring the younger women, so that this mission will be completed. Every species, we want to have their offerings succeed and replace them. That is nature's way, and the house of God should not be an exception. Sometime last year, I went to a congregation. That was my father's congregation, and they gave me a sermon to take. And when I stepped in, I was telling them that I'm feeling so privileged, because I know that my father preached from that same pulpit for many years before he died. I said, I feel so privileged to be here. And I'm hoping also one day my own sons can also be on this pulpit. That is what we are talking about, right? That is what everybody will want. We shouldn't be the people like the Bible talk about in 3 John, the Euphrates, that want to be the only shining star. That is not what is allowable in the house of God. There's a principle in Igbo culture, and I also know that's applicable to many cultures, right? Because it's only Igbo culture I really know about, so I can say that. It's a principle, and in Igbo word they say, "One kapam, let my son be greater than I am." So every father will want their son to succeed and be better, to be greater, to be everything more than they were. Any father that doesn't think like that must be a cruel father, right? You don't say that you want to shine, and when you are not there, let them know that somebody has left. That's evil. So in the house of God, we should also be deliberate, not to think of competition, not to be the only shining star, but to keep the coming generation everything they need, to not just succeed, but to do greater works. We have to be deliberate to mentor them. We have to understand that leadership is not competition. We want to understand that it's not about you as a leader rising above the crowd. It's about you as a leader bringing up the crowd to rise. And that's what we call mentorship. Another principle of generational leadership is character over competency. Right? Yes, it is good when you have great leaders who can do everything we talked about, communicate very fluently, that motivate people to do things and all of that and all of that. Why those things are important? Generational leadership and the leadership in the house of God, was not just for people who were very competent. But what is important, we can see that in the book of 1 Timothy. We also see that in the book of Titus when he's talking about qualifications of what? Elders and bishops. Character, self-leadership, integrity over talents. Qualifications focus more on character. You say reproach, sober-minded, gentle, and not just on charisma, because the person can stand and talk and wow the crowd. That's not, why that could help, that is not what is important. And God demonstrated this when he chose David as the king of Israel. If you remember the story. When the prophet went to the house of Jesse, he saw the bigger and older brothers of Jesse. Like, this person looks like a king. This must be the chosen one. And God will tell them, no, that is not. Until the small boy David came. All right? So character is way more over competency in the leadership of God. That's what the HR people, that's what they call the halo effect. The halo, H-A-L-O, right? Where you will ascribe certain qualities to people just because of what they do or how they are. If someone is big and tall and can speak, this person is what? A leader. We are saying that is not what it's all about. Character is more important. Oh, beautiful. Oh, Sister Sarah. Let her lead the women. Sorry, Sister Sarah. I don't. If I had said my wife now, people would say that I'm using pulpits to personalize it, right? But Sister Sarah is a great leader, so I'm not doing that. But is it just about being beautiful and all of that? That's what we call the halo effect. So we say character over what? Competency. Servant leadership. Service, not dominion. Unlike worldly leadership that lords authority over others. Biblical leadership is defined by humility, sacrifice, and serving the needs of the next generation. True greatness in God's design comes from true service, rather than being, because it's all about sacrificial love. Leading by example. Just like Paul was telling Timothy, so imitate me just as what? As I imitate Christ. So biblical leaders know that their mission is to make others and not to keep power for themselves. They give away power, they sacrifice their right, they serve others. That's easy to say, really. And like I told you, there's a human need, there's a fundamental human need to be appreciated. You actually want to be seen as the shining star. When you feel like that, no, it's not really evil because you are human. But the problem is that when that is your domineering thought, that it makes you, that you don't want the next person to know as much as you do, even know more than you do. At that point in time, you have to commit it to prayer. And we talked about Elijah, who was willing to give his mentee the double portion of his own spirits. So the house of God is not where we have competition. As a matter of fact, it should be proud when you see people coming after you, doing greater works, at least they can say, I was the one that mentored them. They were my boys or they were my girls. Leadership, that's what it's all about. Family as a training ground. We talked about the example of Timothy. We say that the faith that lived in grandmother Louise also lived in mother Eunice, and that also impacted his life. Okay, minister was not here. I'm saying I don't know what happened to their grandfather and their father, right? So if you ever have that question, the minister will answer you because I don't know. So the family is the foundation. The family is like the nursery. The family is a place where spiritual training. You don't just wait and say when they come to the church, they will know about it. The church as a community will flourish when this work has already started in the family. We therefore don't just wait to say we come to church. We will start leading from homes to raise up people who actually will move and pass the word of God from generation to generation. The danger of a leadership gap. When I was preparing this lesson, I remember the minister gave an interesting sermon on this. So I'm not dwelling on it. I want to remind us yet again. In the book of Judges, what happened there? Judges chapter 2, 7 to 8, then I will read 10. It says, and the people served the Lord all the days of Joshua and all the days of the elders who had lived Joshua. All the days of Joshua, the people were serving God. Even the people that lived after Joshua, they were also what? Serving God. Because these things were passed down to them during the time of what? Joshua. Who had seen all the great work that the Lord had done for Israel. And Joshua, the son of Nun, the servant of the Lord, died at the age of 110 years. And all that generation also were gathered to their fathers. I like how the Bible writes. Some that say, those ones also died. They were gathered to their fathers. And there arose another generation after them who did not know the Lord or the work that he had done for Israel. What an anticlimax, right? You start this, you are happy. You get to the point, you are sad. How did it happen? How did it happen? We say there was a generation that personally witnessed miraculous signs and wonders and unbelievable victories, right? And they were therefore believing God and they were talking about God and talking about God. Then suddenly, after them, there are people who did not know anything about God. I think that should get our attention, right? That passage doesn't just come out right somehow. But that passage didn't tell us how it happens. Maybe the people were so busy serving God that they didn't make time to teach the younger generation about God. I don't know what happened here. Regardless, we don't need to know what happened. We simply need to know that this is what? Possible. A whole generation can be lost. The obvious danger then is that where there is a leadership gap, we can have a whole generation that will come up later and do not know anything about what? The Lord. And that generation that will be blamed for it. With so many examples like that. Including what happens in the house of Eli, right? With so many examples like that. I don't know about you, but this situation is frightening, especially in this age and time we find ourselves, right? Things are going so fast. If we are not deliberate, we can easily lose them. It looks like they speak their own language, right? But that language you must understand. In one of the consulting engagements I did for an oil and gas firm, the work involved having meetings with leadership and all of that. A bit of oil and gas is that you have the people, maybe you have a Total, Chevron, and all that. They have figures. There are people who are in the office, but there are people who are either on top of the Atlantic Ocean or anywhere where the oil is actually being done. They are aside and people are at the office. They work together. Most times the bosses are in the office. So what then happened is that this morning, I remember his name, but I won't mention it since we are televising. I asked him, how are you? Hope you slept well. He looked at me and said, how are you expecting me to sleep well? I was a bit confused. He was basically saying, you should know. He said, are you not aware I'm the one holding the phone? It was then I remembered, right? What they call their crisis management plan, the emergency response plan. Like something can go wrong on top of the Atlantic Ocean. Maybe terrorists may come. Maybe pirates may come. Maybe fire may start out. There are things that can happen. You actually ask everybody to evacuate by almost jumping inside the water. There are a lot of things. But because just the way you call 911, the crisis management plan is somebody who is senior enough is at the base holding a phone. The moment anything happens, the first thing you do is that we call that number. It is that person that will activate what will happen later. Do you understand that? So the guy is saying, I'm the one holding this phone for next 1 week, and you're asking me, hope I slept well. He can actually hold that phone for 10 years and nothing happens. But just imagine when your attention is needed and you are sleeping. And the question is, are we awake like this? Are we aware of what danger can actually happen? Are we aware of actually seeing that? It makes me scared when I don't even know the wording, but I remember the chorus. And I like, the first person was like, they did not explain this thing very well. That thing was serious, right? That we are the custodians of God's word. We are the one that basically what happens after will largely be affected by us. I think that should scare us. Not scare us into inaction. That should scare us and making sure that we are doing the right thing. So we must put the right structures in place. At this point in time, I didn't have a lot of notes. I just want to have, I have about 3 minutes from the time. I just want to have a quick conversation. What do we need to do? If we know that a whole duration can actually be lost, if you know that years down the line, things can get worse, if you know that the same thing we are trying to say that we are not even doing well can actually get worse, what do we need to do? I told you at the very beginning that the theme of this teaching is what we call passing it on, and it's clear. And I ask you to listen very attentively because this is the background that will actually lead to subsequent lessons. One thing, first of all, is knowing that things can go wrong. We need to be careful. We need to be intentional. We need to be deliberate. We are not going to leave anything to chance. Right? We need to make sure that things, the right structures are in place. I say the first one is intentional training. You know, I think Ikeja is not doing badly. We have the different classes. We have children class 1, children class 2, teenagers class, newcomers class, sisters class, men, all of that. What youth class? What are we trying to do? We are trying to make sure that people grow into by the time the people that will come after them. But the question is, who can always do better, right? Last year, we had what we call the ICT summer camp for youth. Knowing that the age is of technology, we know that one people must know what is going on there. I think that was commendable. What other things can we do? What suggestions do we have in equipping the current generation so that when it is their time, they will do better than what we are doing right now? If you have those suggestions, please come forward with them. Structured mentorship program. I said earlier that the sisters are doing well already. They are doing great work. I don't know what is happening there, but I know that they are deliberately trying to mentor the younger one. I'm not complaining that I don't know what is happening there, but I'm just saying that I don't know. I know there was a time they met in my house. I was not in Lagos. Later on, I was asking myself, who came? There were so many people. I was like, out of these many people, most of them are my friends. Nobody sent me a text and said, we're in your house or you were not around. I hope you are well. Not one person. I was like, are you sure there's no codes like that we should be worried about, right? So the sisters are doing something very commendable. I think we should also tried to do that. We have kind of muted those ideas on how we can deliberately mentor younger ones and all of that. And of course, succession planning for leadership roles. I was giving an example of property and maintenance and said the people there are not particularly young. Can you, us, not just there, but along the line, start intentionally injecting these people involved in all of that? Wisnanuge is the marriage committee coordinator. Before then, I didn't know it was possible. I thought it had to be a brother Tony, a brother Wamba. When he became the marriage committee coordinator, I told him, I will make sure that I don't have any problem with my wife, because so I will come here, you'll be the one now giving me advice. As who? Right? But the someone was saying we should deliberately be injecting them into leadership roles so that they can actually be ready when the time comes. Listen, yeah, honorable marriage coordinator. I'm not in any way downplaying your power, but you will not see me there. You will not come there. So let us conclude. The decisions we make today can shape generations, either for good or bad, and that should scare us. That should make us careful. We therefore should be careful, not just about what we do today, but the implications of them on a longer term, ensuring that we are intentional, right? They just want any story to be told on your behalf. If you are sending someone a message, you want to make sure that the message they're going to deliver is your message. So you won't just be careless about it. So when we think generationally in accordance to top design, we create better systems and leaving the right legacies. Our prayer today is that we start being more mindful, more deliberate, going forward about the next generations. May the good Lord help us all in Jesus' name. Amen.
We want to say thank you for that wonderful lesson. I want to say this to the church. Onyekwelu mentioned 2 Timothy 2 verse 2. And I want all of us to do that. This is our project that let us do and go with that. And the thing that thou hast heard from me among many witnesses, the same committed thou to faithful men who shall be able to teach others also. Go with this. If you have any questions so far, please let us know. If you don't, that will be great. Okay, one. Okay, that's the only question. Thank you so much, bro. Daniel.
Good morning. Thank you very much. I think you've really touched so much on how responsible we have to be as people who are older to the younger generation. And a lot of the times we see that the brethren who are up there, let's say in terms of maturity, they are very, very receptive to young men coming to them to seek advice, seek guidance, and it's all to the open house. Now, the question is that enough? How much can we contribute and more mature contribute to preempting that connection? What exactly is just waiting for somebody to come to you enough? Right? We know that there are people, it's always open and we can come, but is that enough? And what more can we do? Can the more mature brethren do to initiate that connection like before the younger ones come?
Okay. I think the question is for all of us, right? We continue to ask, what more can we do? we can't get to the point where we said we've done all we could. So the question is, what more can we do? So when you have those suggestions, we're happy to hear them. But let me say something, and this is not to downplay anything. I've been around the Ikeja. I've been here. When, without meaning to, I mentally compare what we have and what we got. I don't mean in Ikeja, where I go, what I actually got from the time I got into the shop, maybe at the age of 18, right? I never attended a youth class because growing up, it wasn't very structured like that. Maybe you have youth convention here, youth convention there. Imagine every month, every Monday, every week, there's a dedicated 2 hours teaching and mentoring the youth. Because I'm in edification, I follow those topics. Sometimes I will tell you people, what I'm telling you now, I wish I knew that 20 years ago. I'm convinced that my life will be better than it is now, right? So you have so much. Why we are saying it can never be too much. I think what is more important is, are you taking advantage of what you have at the moment? A proverb in my place we say, to see and not speak, blame the elders. To hear and not obey or act, blame the younger ones. Are you fully taking advantage of what it is right now? If you are not faithful in little, you cannot be faithful in much. I'm not in any way saying that nothing more could be done. But ask yourself, have you fully, I'm aware that you people have one meeting like that. When you start having meeting, they are announced from pulpit many times. It's usually not about well done, you know. It's always like, yeah, see, we have to see it up. And I feel that. Sometimes you are up, sometimes you are down, sometimes you can't do start, stop, right? For the past, how many years you are doing all of this? This is not I'm not trying to speak as your coordinator. For the past, how many years it happened? We're expecting a trajectory that, in fact, you should be demanding for certain things. I don't mean aluta. We can't do aluta in the house of God. You know, but basically, your actions will make you demand for certain things. And that's where I expect you to be. What more can be done? Think of what can you do by yourself based on what you already have been given. And God will bless you while you do that.
All right, thank you. Well, that's fine. All right, thank you. You have 2 questions here. Please, when you are answering any question, seriously, don't use red. Don't use red. However, I'll say this. This question is talk about the responsibility of the church. Are you getting it?
Yeah.
What happens when you want to mentor a generation that is not ready to be mentored?
Okay. And as I know some of us were frowning when the sub-leader said you should not use red pen. Red pen is what the teachers used to say that you have failed. It's the ones you failed. You know, in case you are not aware, you know. And growing up, he was used to that. He cannot. So please don't use it. I feel the same way too. You know, me seeing the red pen looks like I didn't even know what I was saying all this while. So please don't use red pen. I agree with my service leader. The question is similar to what I answered earlier. I remember having, in one of our house fellowship, it was Brother Mfo that asked that question. You know, maybe it was personal. I said, if you have a younger brother that you are trying to bring together, you know, kind of, who is rebellious or something, and you are doing all you could, and the person is not responding, will you get to a stage where you said, I'll leave the person alone? And the short answer to that question is no. If you have your own kids and they are going astray, do you say, I'm handsing off? I know parents do that, but I don't think you can. In Benin then, a brother has resigned his job from somewhere in Abo to come to Benin to be jobless, to start looking for a job. His reason was that his children were going what? Rebellious. And he felt he had to be around to take care of them. that their mother could not do the job alone. So that was too important for him to resign a job to come and take care of his kids. Maybe if you know that the church is a family and we have this person or this group of people who don't want to listen, who cannot leave them alone, who will continue to be a nuisance to them, right? Why committing them to prayers? We can't just leave them alone. I had an interesting experience with my younger son. You know, it's within the last 3 weeks. It was later on I was asking myself, what are you doing? He did something early in the morning. Part of it was out of anger from me. I told him, okay, for this thing you did, going to school. Two of us, we stay home today. We are going to discuss it. He wailed and wailed. He didn't even know it was possible. Later on, I was asking myself, was he enough to stop him from going to school? I convinced myself that somehow it was enough. I don't know how else I could have passed the message. I have it in my phone. I told him to write a letter of undertaking to say that this will never happen again. I didn't tell him how a letter of undertaking, what it looks like. But eventually he brought a piece of notes, very straight to the point, like 2 or 3 lines. He signed it. He didn't just sign it, he signed it twice. And he wrote his name. And he said, I will never, I don't know if it's going to work, right? But I have it somewhere in my phone where at the age of 11, I made you to write a letter of undertaking saying you would not do something. And I told him something that I said, except there was a story I told when I had the last sermon, when I was talking about a classmate that lost his life and all of that. He acted out of anger. I told him that except I'm not alive, right? We are going to manage this your anger problem. I said, you have me to reckon with. Except sometime, somehow, I'm not here. And it was nothing there. I said, as soon as I'm here, this is going to be a problem within 2 hours. That is how serious it is. The church has given for discipline. But we know that it's not about disfellowship. It's not all about that. When people get disfellowship, what do you do in terms of follow-up? You know, we will be a nuisance to them. That's the answer. We can't let them just behave the way they want to behave. Because it's our responsibility to shape them up. All right. Sometimes I talk to the youth. I was like, sorry, I forgot that I'm not you people's father, right? So if it sounded like that, just know so like because most times I don't see others. I see my own, almost like my own family members, and that's what it shows.
All right, thank you. Thank you. The last one. I read the ways. One, sir. Thank you so much for teaching. What
Two
can you
sides,
say
the one.
about this? He and the elder sister, two younger sister, were in terms of correcting. An incident happened between a younger sister and a older sister. After a younger sister had finished preaching, the older sister stood up in the midst of the old sister and said, she's so disappointed in the sister for not preaching well. She ended up embarrassing the younger sister in front of the other sisters. What is your take when the older brother that you are looking forward to?
How do you move from sister to brother?
Looking forward to be your mentor disappoint you in the way she be. So that's it.
Okay. I wanted to say that I didn't know we're solving family problem, and I realized that I also say that the family and the church they are the same. I know what it's all about. See, there are 2 sides to this, right? I don't want to offend anyone, but I remember the first time I came to Ika. I had a conversation with the brother involved. I won't mention any name. The brother came up here, so on a Wednesday to moderate and put his hand in his pocket like this. You know, you may think he was blowing guard. He was scared. He was fidgeting. Part of putting his hand in his pocket is a way of responding to the fact that there was a stage fright. Right there and then, a brother stood up and blasted him. in the church, right? I was new and I also stood up and said, no, you cannot say that, right? This person is trying to even get used to how to come here and moderate, and I think he has done well. You know, if you feel that he shouldn't have put his hand in his pocket, go and be the end of that person coming back here again. People have different levels of, what's the word now, thresholds. You know, you don't know who you are going to break by the words you say. There are things that were taught to me, not even my parents, a particular auntie, that followed me for a long time until I had to, on my own, be deliberate about taking it up, right? So the first thing I would say is, if we know, I've given a sermon before on power of words. If you know what words can cause, we all generally have to be careful what to tell to people. But that's one part. The other part is this. Because it is not in your place, so start dictating how everyone is going to. Not in your place, you start discussing how. As a matter of fact, some of us act based on what we know. There are things even your parents will do when you grow older. You realize that that was an abuse. But that's all they knew at that point in time. What would you expect them to do? All they did was all they got. So the other side of it is that you need to have a resilient spirit. You are going to be disappointed. Your sister, your brother will behave in a way that you'll be disappointed. Your parents will do that. Your place of work, it is not in your place to start dictating how people are going to treat you. So if you are someone who has sores all over your body that any little talk, any little whatever will be the end of you moving ahead, there's a problem because you don't have control over that. So please, you have to be resilient. Forgive your sister, right? Maybe your sister acted to the extent she knew. And of course, you just call the person a mentor. That means you saw other good things. I don't know what to emphasize on this part. But most of the given examples as leaders in the Bible were flawed one way or the other. You know, people God used at some point were flawed one way or the other. In fact, some of them are asking, there's a particular man called Jethro, you know, that told God that once he will succeed in this war, he will come, the first thing he will see is God. I asked myself, this man gets sense like this. What were you expecting that when you come back, is it the goats or the dogs that will run to welcome you? Well, that was a prayer, that's a promise somebody made to God. Right? Or Samson. In fact, I beef Samson even to today, right? Because I don't know how somebody like that will actually fall into that kind of thing. Right? So why we cannot make excuses, we are humans and we are flawed. Sometimes you don't have everything. But the important thing is that most sisters, elder sisters can be a pain, I know, talking from experience. Most sisters, most brothers, most siblings, most parents, they mean well. Is the extent they know, is the extent they give. Right? So that is what the problem is.
Thank you so much, everyone, for your time. Thank you, Professor Nyas. Thank you, Chinedu.
Thank you.
Thank you, the church, for your attention. They're going to receive a song.
Thank you, bro.
It's fine. You can ask your Chinedu after he says this. Get a song after that, your teaching, and wash your hands with this word.